Hello and welcome. You're watching Digital Disruptors. I'm Kalpana Singhal, Editor-in-Chief CXO TV, and we have Ganesh Ramachandran, Global CIO Alkem Laboratories, as our guest today. Ganesh is a techno-functional business leader and management consulting professional. Ganesh has over 25 years of experience across technology, strategy implementation, consulting, and business development across diverse industries. He has helped set up and grow complex business and has the expertise of owning and managing a P&L of more than 100 crores, managing teams of over 400 people. Hello and a warm welcome to you, Ganesh.
Thank you so much, Kalpana. Thanks for having me in this session.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you today for me as well. As a global CIO, what is your role and responsibility at Alkem?
So I got here, Kalpana, with the mandate being to drive digital transformation across the organization. Pharma as an industry was a little slower on the digital adoption curve. So when I got in here, what they were looking for was someone who came with an exposure across different industries. So if you see my profile, like you laid it out so nicely, has been in consulting, you get the opportunity to work with different industries. You typically work across different areas. And that's what kind of, I guess, led them to say that they wanted to have someone who can come in with a broad-based view and understand business as well. What my role is over here is to really enable, probably in the COVID times, it's been a lot more relevant than what it was earlier. But I don't think it just got accentuated in the current times. But my role really is to make sure that technology enables and in many cases drives the business as well, seeing some of the innovations that we've been seeing in the technology space.
Right. And how are digital technologies helping the pharma industry tide over the current COVID crisis?
Across the organizations and most players in the pharma industry have realized that digital technologies are something that has been very, very helpful. So even before COVID was there, I think the realization was very strongly there. But however, the pharma industry in general was a lot more relationship driven with face-to-face contact, whether you looked at customer-facing processes, whether you looked at chemists, doctors, stockists, or even things like across the sales teams that were there internally too. So it was a lot of touch and feel. You had people going meeting, whether it was reps meeting the doctors, meeting stockists, internally teams reaching out to one another and so on. The COVID crisis hit and the pandemic hit in was people started realizing that, hey, this doesn't work any longer. And for the pharma industry in particular, I believe that the maximum change that we have seen has been in the front office transformation. And there are multiple use cases that I can share with you on where digital technologies have really helped, starting with collaboration tools, if you will, where digital really helped employees stay in touch with the organization, help the organization keep them motivated even during times when they could not go and meet their customers, help them support, engage their customers, and just staying in touch with customers, whether they be stockists, whether they be hospitals, whether they be doctors, and so on. Second area where digital has helped tremendously has been on the process automation side. Earlier, a lot of the order capture, I mean, even simple things like getting an order from the stockist was a manual process. That has largely now got driven with technology. Things like monitoring and managing stocks, predicting and responding to the variability that you have in demand. I think all of those have got taken care now with process automation. The third big area has been the whole thing around analytics. So there's been a lot more increased focus on decision support, transparency, visibility across the value chain. And lastly, I think with work from home and so on, cybersecurity, which has always been an important area, has just gained in prominence. So net-net, if you were to look at where digital technologies have played a role in pharma, particularly for given the pandemic times, I think it has really blurred the line between functional and technology, because there have been so many changes that have been happening. There's been a rapid pace of change that has been there, and there have been requirements that are coming up which are new and unheard of or unthought of earlier. So that's changed the paradigm completely, and digital technologies have played a significant role in making sure that we are able to address those.
Absolutely. So what has been the impact on the supply chain due to COVID-19 and what measures is the industry taking to resolve it?
So I think by and large, pharma being an essential service, has been fairly active right through. Even during the last 3 quarters, and particularly the first quarter of this financial year, when probably there was the maximum amount of disruptions with the lockdown starting and people getting used to the way life was moving on. But I think what really helped was the whole industry bodies that approached the government and the government sensitive nature and support of the requirements that the pharma industry had. So, for instance, if you looked at the supply chain, I think one of the big areas that we saw, especially again taking the first quarter as example, was we saw a slowing down of certain therapy areas. So, for instance, gastrointestinal, because people weren't traveling, you weren't drinking water which was possibly contaminated, and hence you were, in general, a little more healthier. So there was a huge drop in the overall market for things like gastrointestinal or anti-infectives. And that huge variability in the demand led to supply chain needing to quickly align and making sure that you had the right kind of drugs being available at the right place. On the flip side, there was also cases like where people were scared to go to hospitals, and many of the cardiac patients who needed to go for a surgery but was not life-threatening, they could afford to put it off by a couple of months, increase their medications or were advised to increase their medications. And again, that led to the supply chain needing to kind of respond to this variability in the demand that was there. And to meet this increased variability and to make sure that excess inventory doesn't get built up from the organization's viewpoint, I think there's been multiple measures that the industry has kind of looked at. Some of them have been strengthening the whole planning processes, honing the supply chain systems to make sure there's a lot better sales and operational planning process that is there, and a balancing of the demand and the supplies. There were also some challenges in the supply chain with distribution and with sourcing. So again, over there was a lot of support from partners that was seen across the value chain and interventions from the government. There have been cases where there's been a co-opetition that has happened amongst players in the industry, where for a milk run that was being used, a truck going to different places, and you didn't have a full truckload to kind of take it. Companies kind of collaborated together because trucks were in short supply too initially, and made sure that the material went across to ensure that patients got their medication and they were able to continue with it. And I must really salute all the people who've been part of the value chain, whether it is doctors, hospital staff, doctors' staffs at places, the entire distribution and sourcing networks, and the supply chain people who have been at it right through during the last 9 months. And I would think their workload has actually increased a lot more significantly with the pandemic than it was before.
Yeah, that's awesome. All the partners coming together and fighting for the cause. That's really good. And so, what are the highlights of the digital transformation journey for Alkem Laboratories?
We looked at it by saying that what are the key drivers for value? And for us, we defined it saying that it has to meet one of four objectives. For example, top line growth. We spoke about the variability in demand. So how do you ensure that there are no stockouts? Because stockouts and lost sale is clearly something that you do not want to be having. So we have looked at things that help us in giving that to ensure the top line growth is there. Similarly, on anything that helps in driving customer engagement, sales force effectiveness, leveraging analytics and big data for whether you want to slice it by brands, by regions, by a mix of both, by kind of specialties, therapy areas, you name it. I think there's enough and more data that we've been putting back into our sales teams to make sure that they can work with the right kind of things to take across. The second lever that we've looked at very strongly has been on cost reduction. Obviously, given the way the pandemic has gone, every organization, including the pharma industry too, has had a blip in sales, particularly in the first quarter. The overall industry showed a degrowth in the first quarter. And while there has been recovery from Q2 onwards, the first quarter is amongst the highest quarters of sale that typically is there for the industry, and that has taken a beating. So cost reduction has been a huge lever as well. So anything that can help improve the efficiency right across the value chain, irrespective of which area you're looking at, and reducing the non-value add activities, whether you're using RPA, automations, mobility solutions, all of these have been kind of taken, and along with AI, ML, bots, you name it, I think this has been done right across, and Alkem has been no different as well. The third area that we looked at was in improving governance and transparency. So it was making sure to some extent on the cybersec front, and also ensuring that you had segregation of duties that was clearly called out, where you said that who's supposed to do what are authorizations that are there. And more so now when you're looking at a pandemic scenario where people largely are working remotely, How do you ensure that the transparency is there and there's a strong focus on the governance? And lastly, the area that we've looked at when we talked of the value front is does it help in improving engagement, whether it's employee or the customer side? So collaboration tools, platforms, applications. So actually, we came up when we saw the pandemic hitting in. We had reached out to a bunch of our doctors, and we had asked them, so what is it that you're really grappling with? And the clear answer that we heard from our doctors was they said, we're really worried about how do we take care of our patients, because patients are scared to come to the clinic. We don't know how to kind of provide them the care. We obviously can't go to their houses as well. So how do we really manage that? So we came up with a platform to help doctors engage their patients, where we helped set up a virtual clinic. So unlike some of the other platforms that you would see out there, which is more of a marketplace, we came up with a virtual clinic digital engagement platform for doctors to reach their patients called Connect to Clinic that we have set up. We have over 22,000 doctors who are on the platform today. We launched the first version in June. It is created and crafted for doctors and done along with doctors, where we had a pilot done with about 75 odd doctors who went through the platform, told us what they liked, didn't like, what kind of features would they use. And we are increasingly now going into saying what are therapy-specific things that doctors may need. And it's got a fair bunch of things that are there, which is very, very specific for what doctors would require. For instance, in the offline world, you have a regular consultation and a follow-on consultation. And typically the time slot for your follow-on consultation is less than what you have for your regular consult, because you're just going in to show a report, check if a wound is healing, things like that. So we have enabled that in the online platform too. So there is a differential timing that the doctor can set for a regular versus follow-on, different fee structures whether the doctor can set for it. Doctor has, the platform provides complete HIPAA compliant AV components that are there in it. It also ensures that whatever data is between the doctor and the patient is encrypted and is visible only to them. No one else gets to see it. Anything else you see is just encrypted garbage that you'd see in between. It's something we are very, very excited about and very, very proud of, that it's one of the first in the pharma industry that we took across into the market. And we've been very, very overwhelmed and happy with the support that we have got from the doctor fraternity for getting this platform into the market.
That's really nice to know, and it's a correct saying that need is the mother of the invention. So this platform is all about that. And so how many members you have, the doctor members you have, you said?
We have over 22,000 doctors currently on the platform. Like I was saying, we launched our beta version in June. So effectively, the platform got launched somewhere to mid of August, end August. Because initially it was just getting the kinks ironed out, making sure we had the right features in place and so on. And every week every 3 to 4 weeks, there are new features that are coming out. So, and it's also, so it provides all the options that doctors could need. We realized some doctors were okay with just doing a web-based browser kind of a thing and going in. Some wanted to have an app. So all the options are available. If you don't want to download an app, you could use the web-based browser and go in. If you want to use an app, that's available too. If an appointment is booked for you, you get it on your calendar. It gets popped up on, if you're using a Google or an Outlook calendar, it pops up directly over there. You get reminders. You get ways by which you can engage with your patients, even in the offline mode. So we have marketing that we do at the clinic, where we provide training to the doctor's staff. We provide stickers, posters, for the doctor to publicize to patients that he is available for online consultation on this platform.
All right. So how would you measure the successful outcomes of this journey in terms of IT infrastructure, workforce skill set, technology partners, and cybersecurity?
What are the objectives against which we are kind of looking at all these 4 areas you laid out? I think you spoke of infrastructure, skill set, partners, and security. So what the pandemic has really kind of laid across, and it's taught us to be safe. But for me, safe means something a little different. So it means that the speed of response, I think the pandemic has really highlighted that. People now want responses very, very quickly, because demands are changing in the market very, very quickly. It needs you to also kind of align with the ambiguity that is there in the market. And hence you need to have for the change requirements that are there. How do you make sure that you have systems that are available and able to cope up with it? The third part has been on the flexibility. If you look at the F in SAFE, flexibility is something that people have been looking at systems. So I have a system that I've started with, and then the requirements have changed. So for instance, when the lockdown initially started, we had the red zones, orange zones, green zones that were there. And what was a red zone, a green zone today could become a red zone tomorrow. And hence the requirements just completely changed and people could not move across the way they were able to. And whatever solution you're providing should be able to cope up with that. So as simple things as looking at providing access to people to say that they were working for an essential service and they needed to go across to a hospital to check the stocks because they were not allowed to move around and the administration was not letting people move around, rightfully so. And the last E in the SAFE to me is everywhere access. I think with what we've been seeing, whether you're looking across form factors like tablets, mobile, laptops, or whether you're looking at people who are connecting from all kinds of different places, how do you manage it has been a key challenge that we've seen. So just to sum up, I think the key challenges that we have looked at before we talk of outcomes has been speed, availability, flexibility, and everywhere access. Now, to meet all of those, the way we measure ourselves is we look at what is the SLA that we are setting up. So typically the way we have viewed any of the services we provide across to the organization has been to say that what is the SLA we are defining for ourselves here and how do we hold ourselves accountable towards that. In some cases, these are very easy to measure. In many other cases, like if you talk of security and so on, it's a little more difficult to measure. I mean, you can't say that I blocked 99.99% of the attacks. That 0.01 could be the one that completely brings you down. For us, like I was pointing out, we align very strongly with the business results. We have moved away from typically traditional measures of uptime, availability, and all of those because we don't really see that as contributing to what we are looking for. And of course, they are all important as internal measures, no doubt about those. Things like those are what we look at. We try and align ourselves a lot more to the business. And like I've been mentioning, we try and make sure that we have the business and the IT parts working collaboratively and problem solving jointly. And it's been a lot more enhanced in the current times. So one of the good things that I think the pandemic has brought out is it has got the business leaders to realize that technology is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you revamped your GTM strategies with the new approaches to patient and employee engagement post-COVID, and how have these been integrated?
The pandemic initially brought down and the industry went through a fair amount of churn around it. So initially the industry tried doing calls to the doctors or WhatsApp call to the doctors. And obviously it didn't go down very well. So doctors said, here we are trying to grapple with our business and trying to grapple with saving lives. And you guys are calling us and talking about some products of yours. The engagement then moved towards saying, how do we really drive engagement through webinars? So there was a whole bunch of webinars that were laid across. Fatigue set in very, very quickly there too. Some of the players like us, we moved across to saying that how can we actually work with solving a problem that doctors are facing, and hence Connect to Clinic, which I was mentioning a little while earlier, was born. But if you look at the whole GTM strategies currently that are being looked at, I think it is a mix of saying largely offline. So the offline mode, I don't think is going to go away. I liken it to something like what you saw on online shopping and the retail experience. When Amazons and the others came and people were saying that offline stores are probably just going to go, but that's not happened. Offline stores do have their space. There are some product categories where there's a little more online that is used. That's the same as well in the pharma industry too. There are some therapies, some specialties which lend themselves for a little more offline. The doctors are a lot more comfortable with offline even visits that are there, be it from the companies or be it to their patients. And in some other cases, doctors are less comfortable there. So I think the industry is still evolving with what is the right mix that needs to get across when it is taken there. The last part has been on the internal engagement amongst whether it's Salesforce or whether it is people amongst us too. So there, I just see a lot more of the collaboration that has really come in. So the employee engagement piece, and particularly if you talked of sales, where almost every meeting, every month you had people applying or going across for cycle meetings, sales reviews and all of that, that has just completely gone into the online mode. And people have got used to it because most of the sales teams in the pharma industry do their detailing to the doctors on tablets. I think we are going to fall at a balance in between. From what I hear from the industry and what I keep seeing, people view it somewhere between 20 to 30%, but the jury is still out on that.
Yeah, it could be a hybrid kind of a model, both
Yeah.
physical and virtual. So as you rightly said that work from home cannot be fully implemented, of course, in a pharma setup. So okay, so what kind of collaboration tools will you like to name some of your technology partners that you have been using and have been supporting you during this journey?
We have given people options of many, and there are different tools that are there, and I think it depends on what the organizations look for. So we have Gmail that we use a lot for our corporate setup too. So G Suite and Google Meets has been something that we have used in our organization. We've also used Zoom. Microsoft Teams has been fairly used. We have used BlueJeans. So I think there's been a plethora of platforms that we have used and tried. And depending on the team's comfort, given that we are a fairly large organization, we allow people to kind of take it on. So I think the key thrust for us as we go through each of these different tools and what we are looking at is making sure that the experience has been good and also ensuring that security is protected.
Right. So, as pharma companies continue to embrace digital transformation, they are highly sensitive and valuable information becomes even more attractive for cyber attacks. So,
Yeah.
on that note, my last question to you is what challenges do you foresee for the pharma sector in India and how to overcome them?
So I think InfoSec is a challenge right across. There have been cases that we have seen, and not just in pharma industry, bigger players across industries have been targeted, whether it's insider threats or external threats. Uh, the pharma industry as well, particularly in India, has not been spared of it either. There have been cases that we have seen in the last few months where companies had their operations completely shut down. Uh, so it is a threat that's here to stay. So the way we really see it is there are a few things that work from home makes absolutely imperative as you're kind of going along. Many companies have taken it up, whether it is making sure you have multi-factor authentications, you have access through VPNs. Many companies, including us, we have moved towards a zero trust network. So the best of your policies can kind of fall flat if you don't take care of the critical piece, which is your people. So, and it's not people who have malified intent, could just be a genuine lack of awareness. So, having the right level of security awareness being made to people as well, I think, is critical and crucial as you embark on the security journey. You obviously, I think there is a need for multiple things which organizations would probably be tracking, whether it's a security operating center, having a lot more DLP, data loss prevention in place, having MDMs in place, having a complete privileged information management layer in place to track what is the kind of things that are going around, even within super users. I think just looking at and having whatever is the framework that you think is right for you and working through with a framework, be it an IST, be it a 27001, or any of those are probably useful starting points. And the more you kind of get on and work through with it, the more helpful it would be. Given that also there is a shift towards a lot more cloud-based technologies, just ensuring that you have the right level of contracting arrangements with some of the cloud-based service providers would also be helpful to ensure you get your data back in the manner in which you want it at any point that you decide to terminate the engagement or decided to kind of move on to any other kind of application or service provider. I think those would broadly be where I would leave it at, because as a topic in itself, this is one that we can go on for a lot more time, and it's one which I'm very, very passionate about too.
Yeah, that's true. So thank you, Ganesh. It was complete pleasure interacting with you, and I really appreciate your time. And it was quite informative, and I'm really sure that it will be useful to other organizations as well.
Thank you so much, Kalpana. Thanks for having me on, and I enjoyed chatting with you as well. Do take care. Have a fantastic year ahead and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Please follow hashtag Digital Disruptors and stay tuned to our social media channels for more updates. Stay safe and take care.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.